Hello everybody, this is Dr. Langdon again, board certified pediatrician, mom of 6 and grandma of 2 with another on the way. And today's video is about lactose intolerance, something I get a lot of questions about and a lot of parents are slightly confused about. So hopefully today we will explain what this means and the impact it could have on your kid, young adult, or definitely in adults. So first of all, the most common confusion I see is that parents get mixed up a genuine allergy and a lactose intolerance. So it is not a lactose allergy. Most people with lactose intolerance can tolerate a little bit of dairy, just not a lot. They could have some nausea, gas, bloating, diarrhea, somewhere from 30 minutes to 2 hours after consuming a large amount of dairy. And typically what will trigger these bouts is if it's a whole glass full of milk, for example, with nothing else with it. Or if it's maybe a whole bowl full of ice cream, definitely they could have symptoms. Or a lot of cheese on their pizza. But lactose intolerance, not allergy, is not the same as a cow's milk protein allergy, a genuine one. So the proteins in cow's milk are casein and whey. And if somebody got a large volume of that and they were lactose intolerant, yes, they would have gassiness, bloating, diarrhea, feel yucky, and tummy ache. But if a person with a cow's milk protein allergy got it, they would have swollen eyelids, puffy lips, throat swelling, wheezing, immediate vomiting, hives all over their body, need to have an EpiPen injection, and it would be life-threatening. So for people who have the protein allergy, who are genuinely allergic to milk, they need to read ingredients. Let their allergist tell them whether or not they can tolerate milk baked into products, things like that. But kids who just get a tummy ache after they drink too much milk, that's an entirely different thing, okay? So let's talk about the lactose intolerance part. These children did not usually develop the lactose intolerance until they were older. Because remember, the sugar or the carbohydrate source in human breast milk is lactose. So infants tolerate lactose generally across the globe. Because evolutionarily speaking, at least, it would be very silly if they couldn't survive off their mom's own milk. And human milk has lactose as its sugar, okay? So they would only develop it later. Now, there are some genetic or ethnic differences sort of between who is sensitive to sugar lactose and who isn't. The most frequently affected, up to 90%, are Asian Americans, and then African Americans and Native Americans are up to around 75 to 80% affected with lactose intolerance. And this is a thing that's on a spectrum. Some people are more severe than others. And then it's least likely in people of Northern European descent, even though certainly it happens. The statistics I saw were like between 18 and 25%. So it can happen in anybody. It is not just a racial thing, but there are differences in the likelihood. Now, there are some tricks we have in the modern era which are so nice. You can find things that don't have lactose in them. They're specifically, on purpose, lactose-free. You can also use a Lactaid, which is providing you lactase, that enzyme that breaks down the sugar, lactose, the carbohydrate. You can find alternate sources of milk that still have vitamin D and still have calcium, which is great. And if and only if they have an alternate source of the sugar, that probably shouldn't bother you at all. So if you're trying to figure out what you have or what your child has, and you do have some bouts of diarrhea, you can do a pretty simplistic little science experiment and just keep a record, a diary, sort of a journal of when your symptoms happen, and see if every time they're after dairy consumption. If you're having symptoms when you had no dairy in your diet, it certainly wasn't lactose intolerance. And even people who do have it can often get away with some occasional treats if it's a small amount, if it's consumed with other foods, or if they use these Lactaid products. So you guys, I hope this was helpful. We would never blame lactose intolerance on a kid who was having failure to thrive or difficulty growing or fell off of their growth chart. We would typically not see bloody diarrhea with lactose intolerance, just really gassy, maybe foamy stools, voluminous stools, watery stools, and stomachache, but not so much the blood. So if there was a lot of blood in the stool with frequent diarrhea and also growth failure, we would be more concerned about a more serious illness like a ulcerative colitis or one of those inflammatory bowel diseases. Now, sometimes it is tricky to tell if it's irritable bowel because irritable bowel can be stress-induced, can go from diarrhea to constipation, back and forth. But again, if you could keep that journal so you could help differentiate. Also, there is a test not really used in peds that I have ever used, maybe at the GI doctors, but not in primary care, called a hydrogen breath test, and that's more often used on adults to help differentiate if it's irritable bowel syndrome versus lactose intolerance. I hope that helped, and definitely if you're concerned about lactose intolerance, this should help you quit worrying about reading all ingredients just to see if there's protein, the cow's milk protein like casein and whey and things, because that's two different things. We're just talking about missing lactase enzyme to digest the sugar lactose. Hope that cleared it up for you. If not, feel free to ask me questions. Thanks.